Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm Joanne Borlase, and I'm an evolutionary astrologer. I'm here with Sue Hilliard and Robin Grabfelder in the EA Zoom meeting room. And it's a pleasure to present to you this fourth and final part of my series on aspects and phases and the phases and aspects through the apple tree's life cycle. So let's begin. I'll just change my slide here. So this symbol is really significant. I just want to talk a bit about it and its mysteries. When you put the circumference of an apple right in half, you see the star in the center, or more appropriately called pentagram. And I think we know much of its meaning and that it's not evil, it's not Satan, has nothing to do with Satan or evil, and is actually a symbol of protection and wards off evil. So when you see it inverted, it's more to do with one's shadowed self. The symbol is prominent in much of nature, as in these, let's see, whoops, the five-petaled flowers, starfish, or sea star. You can see it here in the blueberries or other, it's in other fruits as well. But you see this little star symbol on its stem. Also, something that's talked about a lot, which you can see is the Venus star, the Cazimi in our solar system, which just entered Gemini on June 4th and is continuing its current cycle, which began back on June 3rd, 2020. And it'll end on June 1st, 2028. I think Ariel Gutman, she authored a book called The Venus Star Point, and I believe the Cosmic Intelligence Agency, or they call it CIA abbreviated, they've got some lectures and courses on it too. So this pentagram or pentagon, it holds power as well and is also found in the outer structure of our DNA, which is joined up with the hexagrams. And so if you look at it, you can see there's these hexagrams that have six sides, but the pentagon shape or pentagram shape, it's pentagon, has the five sides. So it's part of the DNA structure, and it kind of shows you the Venus involved in the DNA or the blood. And you can see it's Taurus, Scorpio, or Venus, Pluto access archetype reflections here, and the procreation principle playing out as well. So the pentagram is actually the true original symbol of Christianity and was associated with power and magic. And later it became associated with evil, perhaps due to a split in the church where the pentagram became a symbol of certain groups within the church who hid the truth and the fact that the human body is actually a bioelectrical organism. Eventually, the symbol represented the oppression of women through sexist scripture and also repression of women by the patriarchal community. And yet, this symbol is all about the Divine Mother, Source herself, and the Yin archetype. And also to note, the symbol, it's still present today on some, here we go, some medieval churches, whoops, as in the Amiens North or the North Rose of Amiens Cathedral in France. And here you can see it's actually inverted. And then it's also on the Exeter Cathedral in Devon, UK. And you know what's interesting about this church is that it's also got inside an astronomical clock that shows the hour of day, the day of the lunar month. So the moon's involved here, and the phase of the moon. And here's another church nearby me. This one here, St. Paul's on Bloor Street in Toronto, and called the Little Church up Yonge Street. And if you look closely at this church too, it's got, you can see, like up here, it's got the five-petaled flower. Also, whoops, also here, lower down. You can't see it because this thing here is covering it, but it's got another five-petaled flower. And then up here, there's an actual star. And around the star are like yin and yang type symbols. And so I find this really interesting. Um, the yin yang is like the sun and the moon, and it's also the numerical values of two being the yin and three being the yang, representing the duality in nature, and two representing duality in nature, and three representing the Trinity. But this also shows like the sun and the moon occurring, the transitions that happen there, and the number five again is Taurus, as in, like the five senses. It's basically part of the Taurus archetype. So this pentagram is also present on medieval castles and some castles and churches that stand today laid out in that symbol. Um, and then also the US Pentagon. The symbol dates back to the Sumerians and is also associated with the goddess Inanna. And it's been found painted on Sumerian pottery that dates back to 5500 or 3300 BC. So you can see it's a very potent, powerful symbol. It has all kinds of deep symbolic meaning and history. Also with the five wounds of Christ, perfection of the body, um, where spirit commands the five elements of God and nature, being the fire, earth, air, water, spirit, or ether. And that's an alchemical transformation. And also the true symbol of tetragrammaton, which is the word of God, which I think has been converted to the 6-point star today. So the five-pointed star, it also sits on top of a Christmas tree, and the Christmas tree's origin is pagan, which represents fertility and new life and the darkness of winter when bringing an evergreen into the house. And lastly, all creatures in life and consciousness are always rising, and to try to get on top of that star, the top point of the star, which represents the human spirit desiring to get closer to God, touch the sky, ascend to the heavens, and to be the best within oneself, basically conquer one's lower desires of the ego. So that brings me to Capricorn and the 10th house here for the beginning of the last quadrant and the last quarter phase and balsamic phase. So this fourth quadrant, it's a significant corner or gateway, begins at the top of the chart or where the MC or the midhaven is. And also you can see the moon here, the last quarter square shape of the moon, and then here we're entering the balsamic phase. So we're just focusing on this square today. And this is basically my contribution to the world. That's kind of what its energy is about. Whereas here in the first quarter, this was who am I? In the second quarter, we had the what actions am I taking? And then here we had with more relationship focus on who's for and against me. So just moving on now into here. So this is the last quarter phase in nature showing up. Again, the gateway, and the key word here is conflict or crisis. This is basically the crisis in consciousness, and where the tree, it's reached its highest potential in its design. And so it's at this point of now what? What's next? And there's like this void or this friction occurring, and it doesn't know its direction to move towards. It's gone past its purpose and highest meaning. So now there's this destabilization of itself, and this is just a deconditioning process in the snake shedding its skin. And snakes actually do go blind for about 4 to 7 days during the process, unable to see in front of them, and they become agitated and fearful. And so, yeah, again, the deconditioning and the snake shedding the prior processes of what it was. So these trees are also quite bare this time of year, and they appear like black skeletons or black bones with really thick, coarse bark on their trunks. Um, and it's very dry. And Capricorn is very much represented in this energy. This is also, there's also this eerie stillness in the air. And this is a time where the tree needs to basically go to sleep or fall dormant, so that it can enter its chill hours required during the colder months. So the hormones that are needed for dormancy can get broken down, and then the tree will be able to reawaken at the right time, which is the Aquarius energy that we'll be getting to. And this helps the tree remain healthy and to continue to grow. So this is also an involution, a time of withdrawing, where there's past energy or friction between what the tree was and its new potential growth. It's very Cancer Capricorn. There's a polarization happening between the Cancerian crisis in action square, first quarter square, and then the repolarization of Capricorn in the crisis in consciousness last quarter square. So this involution must occur here to get to the Aquarian energies. And Capricorn is also that wisdom consciousness. It's reached the top. It's forever cycling back in upon itself through karma, but it's definitely that sea goat, showing also in its glyph, which I'll show in a few minutes, the going up and down the mountain. So there's so much more to say about Capricorn, but I need to move on. And so coming to the quintile now. Um, yeah, here we're at the quintile. And I'm not sure, can you see my whole screen, Sue? Because some of it's cut off on my side, a bit at the bottom.
Yes, a little bit of it is cut off.
Oh,
Yeah, the
okay,
bottom.
okay. I'm not sure how to shrink this a little bit. Um, I think I have to take it out of that's okay. I'll just try to slide slowly. Um, yeah, so the quintile, it's a very creative time. There's a lot of, well, there's gestation and expansion that takes place, and there's a connection to larger and more cosmic forces that are starting to come in. You can't see this stuff. You can only just see the tree there with its bud and how it's frozen. But this energy is also a crystallization that's occurring, and the crystallization also appearing through the tree's trunk, with the bark hardening or those woody growth, hardened buds on the branches as well. So this needs to occur so that the tree can basically process that shedding and deconditioning stuff, in order to transform to Aquarian energies. So that brings me to the glyph that I'll discuss now. So we've got, these are the mountain goats up here, and then we've got the Argan goats who climb the Argan tree, and they're very agile. And then we've got the ibex, which climbs the dams, that holds all these minerals, calcium, lime, that help feed its bones, so it can remain healthy. And Capricorn, the arc or the name of the constellation Capricorn is actually the um, horn of plenty, meaning accomplished a lot. So it's reached that highest point of itself. And this, again, it's the wisdom consciousness showing up here. where the primal energies and egoic identity is represented by the fishtail have been accomplished in the goat. And so also the fishtail represents the emotions which are often misplaced. And they're like part of the lower egoic identity, the waters of consciousness. So the goats climb to the top of the mountain, or the MC, when looking at a chart, symbolizes reaching the highest of heights within oneself, having gone around three-quarters of the zodiac. And you can see here the great horns resemble Aries, but it's not Aries so much as more about hoofed animals or mammals, where the goat represents a more mature version of the Aries glyph and the Aries archetype after the native has traveled through the 9 prior zodiac signs. And then the V in the glyph as well is the going up and down the mountain. And the circle represents not only the fishtail in the sea, but the circling back upon itself being its karmic pattern. So the stepping backwards into the past, as goats do, they step down mountains and then they climb back up in order to step forwards into the future. So this is again, that goat climbing up and down the mountain to ultimately reach the top. And these are basically the teachings of the eternal as well, eternal consciousness, the alpha and the omega, the I am consciousness, which signifies the past, present, and future. And so Saturn here, it's also the ruler of Capricorn. It's yin yang and holds the patriarchal energies. And whereas the moon, represented by yin energies embodying goddesses, fertility, nurturing, and the matriarch, there's that polar axis going on. The Capricorn and Cancer together are the yin and yang archetypes, but they sit on the angular houses, so that's where that yang energy is also coming from. And these energies encompass the gender influences and gender assignment as well. And again, we see, so I'm just going to move my slide here to the next one. Whoops. Um, so yeah, we've got an apple graveyard, and these apples, they've dried out. Um, and then we've got the skeleton representing the bones, which is Capricorn. And then we've got, so let me just go to my notes here. So when correlating Capricorn in nature to the apple tree, I couldn't find really anything that resembled or had a reflection, except that goats like to eat apples. But in nature, the redwood forest in California, they're the tallest trees and also the tallest plant species on Earth, reaching heights over 380 feet. And this reflects the goat reaching the highest of its heights on mountains. And so that was as close as I could come. But I Googled this fish called the mangrove rivulus, and it lives in water as well as land. So I found this fish really fascinating, that it can spend up to 66 days consecutively on land breathing air through its skin and through living in small logs where they were once submerged into the water. And then these logs, the water, I guess it basically evaporates. And so these fish somehow are able to live. And they're pretty aggressive and territorial. They move around by tail flipping its head over its body towards its tail. So they can actually move over the land. And they also reproduce on their own and are hermaphrodites, although eggs can be fertilized by the males as well. So there's this androgynous aspect, or this yin and yang energy and gender switching playing out as well, which is part of the Capricorn Cancer axis, the MCIC archetypes. So it's really quite interesting in nature, but obviously does not constitute all fish moving from land to, or from sea to land. Anyway, I just found it very interesting, and also the fact that life's first life forms evolved from the sea. And in looking at the drought, if you don't water plants and the earth, it becomes brittle and dry. The earth itself cannot hold life without water. So if we set too many boundaries around our emotions, because water represents our emotional body, and we don't let our emotions in, we can't evolve, because evolution progresses only through the emotional body and also in relationships, but through the emotions represented by water. So there's a need for the right amount of water, the right amount of earth, or structure to simply find that right balance to hold life. And with the fishtail representing the waters of consciousness, there's no choice but to push through and rise up that mountain like the goat does. And noticing though also about this fishtail, it's behind the goat. So I saw this as it's important to not push forward with one's emotions first. So you know how people get angry, they lose the top of their head and freak out, and then, it's all emotional. But this structure is something kind of like a message to follow. And instead, step forward with the philosophy of inspect, move slowly, and with perseverance before you expect. So, yeah, I just thought that was something that should be mentioned. And then lastly, here, moving on with this next slide, after 4 weeks of fertilization, there's the neural tube that forms the spine cord and the brain in the human embryo. And you can look at this stuff as well about the 28 days is equal to one moon cycle. One Saturn return cycle is 28 years. So, yeah, you can see the spines forming here, and then also with the tail representing the fish tail and then the head. So I found that really interesting too. And then lastly, moving on again to the star, which I'll be reflecting upon here and there throughout this presentation. Um, uh, this is where, okay, so the devil card in tarot, it represents the Capricorn zodiac sign and has a Saturnian influence. So these are about lessons to learn, and the devil warns us of our desires, our temptations, our lower self, our lower egoic identity in the waters, which are experiencing the corporeal world around us. And the devil is also a vampire, having kind of like these bat wings, as in Baphomet or the god Pan. And I think we can get the drift here, but the pentagram again pointing downwards points to the corpore- corporeal world and our ego identity. So the devil also, he's got these chains sitting or loosely sitting around Adam and Eve. And it also shows that there is a way to release one's desires or to be released from them. You can just simply take them off. And, so they're not that tightly bound. It's a matter of choice and free will. And I think Pan was small too. He's childlike. He represents the childlike qualities in ourselves that we've had a tendency to neglect, such as our inner lunar child and the need to get back into the emotional body in order to mature it. And Pan lived in forests too, with the trees, had a great love of mountains and caves, which represent the sea goat as well. And he also had a bit of a temper and would scare passersby for fun, showing his Saturnian nature. And so this card symbolizes the polarization of opposites of yin and yang, the half human, half animal, and good and evil. And yin and yang are also to attain the balance between them, to strive for that perfect social order. And Capricorn is about also public careers, public society, the highest point of self in society. So I'm going to move on now to the uh, the sextile here. So this is about opportunity, and um, the bud is frozen on the outside, but new structures are being formed, created on the inside by through the sun's rays that are warming the bud. So there's this breaking down, a fragmentation occurring within the bud, and electrical forces are at work here. The bud's regrouping or defragmenting to form something more than it was. And the sepals, you can see they're expanding and overlapping the developing bud, which is very tight, and they begin to harden, protect the bud inside, a bit like a chrysalis or a pupa of a butterfly, but not exactly. And so there's this new order coming about, and mm, with the air sign Aquarius, it's known as the water bearer that pours the waters of consciousness in nature. So, water here is trapped when it's frozen this time of year, and as the sun warms it, the ice begins to melt and the water gets absorbed by the bud. And this is Aquarius's or represents Aquarius's gift to humanitarian causes as well. Um, the gift to the group. Also, representation of the man pouring a stream of water down out of a jug suggests in ancient times. The rising of Aquarius coincided with the time of floods and rain in the Middle East, and rain and water associated with good fortune, good luck. And Aquarius here with the sextile also, it holds long-term memory or the record books of the past parts and structures on a particle level. So moving on to the next slide here. Um, yeah, this is okay, so this is the balsamic phase, and it's the next gateway. And keywords here are friction, crisis. So you can see that how the bud has changed since the beginning, the first presentation I did. It's now really becoming something more inside. This is almost like a cave, I guess. A cave having inside new growth is occurring. And as the sun dries it with the sun's warmth, there's new identity patterns being created, and this bud is starting to really swell here. I think it's a little bit bigger than the other one, although, anyway, the bud is beginning, yeah. Well, this is more of a close-up view, but you can see the drying out that's occurring on the outside. So that brings me to the glyph of Aquarius as well. It's these zigzags that are like the water. And um, but Aquarius, yeah, it's not a water sign, it's an air sign, yet it holds divine wisdom. And so it's following the wisdom consciousness into divine wisdom. And this divine wisdom is universal wisdom. So the jagged line represents the water, the wave particle, and the inconsistencies of nature too. It looks like a heartbeat. You can see the ECG over here. It looks like a heartbeat. Um, and being opposite Leo, Aquarius Leo axis, Leo is ruling planet is the sun. So this is like Aquarius is the heartbeat with its electrical current that beats the heart of Leo. And this jagged line also symbolizes electrical consciousness in nature, and also the speed and power of thought and matter, seeing flashes or the future, having visions like bolts of lightning. And this also occurs in plants. There's electrical processes going on in the cellular development in its cytoplasm. Um, And so things are coming apart and they're being restructured, reformulated. And also, this glyph, it shows the water falling from the sky to land and then back up, rising through evaporation. And trees transfer water from the ground into the air, and they play a role in the Earth's water cycle as well. So, also in ancient cultures such as the Sumerians, Egyptians, Babylonians, again, they spoke of waters above and below, representing that jagged symbol, and the superficial myth of creation being Genesis. So, water not only represents the emotional body and ego consciousness, but also the ever flowing eternal waters of all of life. It's the fountainhead, also known as the fountain of knowledge or the origin of something. And Ayn Rand, she wrote a book called The Fountainhead, and the title itself refers to the human ego as the source of our evolution. And that's where individualism and originality come from, with self-interest always at the front. And this is what's helped to drive most of human history. This glyph also holds quantum power, or quantum reality. It's about the primordial energy consciousness and universal memory data bank, commonly known as the Akashic Records or the famous unconscious collective, according to Carl Jung, and the ability to download memory or pieces of it, its records through electrical consciousness and in flashes of animate thought forms or through the dream state or visions or the astral world, basically astral, or sorry, psychic, basically psychic energies. And the cupbearer isn't only about the pouring of waters of consciousness, it's also reflective of the mind and communication. And water has that memory, that imprinting at even the smallest subatomic particle. And another thing to say is the churches are religious representatives that bless you with water. All of that is actually all that's required to bless anybody or anything with water is just the person or the native holding its own conscious awareness, to charge the water themselves with their own thoughts and emotions. So, you don't really need a religious representative. And with the Aquarius, there's also that wish upon a star within the Star Tarot card. It's a time for healing, a time to shine, to sparkle, and prepare for the future hopes, wishes, and dreams. There's that twinkle, twinkle, little star too, and holds liberation and freedom after the chains of the Devil card in the tarot, represented by Pan. And what else did I want to say here? There was thought there was something else, but I think I say it later on. And then this is interesting, very interesting about the frozen bud, that its memory affects the rate at which the water solidifies it as ice. So even if it's been frozen before, it's going to have that past consciousness structure being integrated, that past memory from the water, and this affects the bud's formation inside at a particle level as well. So moving on now to the semi-sextile, which now we're at Pisces. So here, the sepals, you can see they're starting to separate, and there's a new form that's almost ready to break through. Um, Past tissues are dissolving, and there's this new manifestation inside the bud. Pruning can take place here too, creating a stronger, more durable tree, later giving the ability for the tree to learn to recover, to heal, regenerate itself, and eliminate the branches and shoots. The tree also gets a second chance to survive, to overcome pestilence and disease, and Pruning basically helps the tree to hold the weight and quantity of its apples later on. But also pruning can injure it as well. And so that's where you can see sometimes there's this juice or sap that leaks out. And then this is the time of a promise of new beginnings. And then we enter the balsamic phase here. I don't want to go too fast. Here we go. This is a gateway. Um, so uh, this is basically the last phase. The cytoplasm is like the amniotic fluid in the womb, and we can see that here that the bud is getting ready to emerge. And then, yeah, it's just basically, it's almost prepared to break out of this shell. And then we come to the balsamic phase conjunction, but this is a balsamic conjunction. And so something's beginning, something's ending here. Um, I don't know if you ever saw this movie, that powerful scene in The Mummy where Anubis rides his chariot down the stairs, and he goes right through Imhotep, taking Imhotep's powers back. And then Imhotep gets stabbed by Rick, and they all realize now Imhotep's mortal, he bleeds. And so he starts to stumble backwards into the waters of death and rebirth and waters of consciousness. And he starts to say, death is only the beginning as he sinks back into the underworld. So this is that something's ending and something's beginning. There's a seeding during this time. It's very potent, and nothing or energy never dies. It only transforms. And so there's this new form budding with the green there, and it's in transition. It's in that state of transformation, just coming out of the cosmic womb. So it's in two worlds. And lastly, I just got to say that plants are sacrificial beings for all of life as well. And in moving on to the glyph, um, oops, here we go. So this glyph is pretty interesting. We have uh, two fishes here, and they're joined by this ribboning band at the knot. And this is basically two fishes going in two separate directions. And it's kind of like those processes of coming and going, death and rebirth. It's part of, or it's just beginning to separate from the cosmic womb um, into conscious reality. And this band or cord represents the unity of opposing forces in consciousness, which generate creative consciousness and the creative energies, which then create life. And this is also the story of Aphrodite and her son Eros, who saw Typhon coming, and they needed to hide from the Typhon. And they turned themselves into two fish, or were saved by the two fish, joined at the ribbon. And the star Elrisha, it's one of the most brightest stars in the Pisces constellation, meaning cord itself. And this is like the umbilical cord or the primordial connection to the divine before rebirth, and then the process of Pisces into Aries. So, this intertwining energy of opposites also represents in all of life the double helix strand, or simply the DNA that ties us to our families, as well with Aphrodite, who was mother to Eros, the god of love. And in the tarot card, the sun and moon, I found this interesting that one fish in the Pisces constellation faces north towards the North Star, Polaris, which is Cancer, or the Cancerian, yeah, the Cancer constellation or archetype. And it brings that Cancerian energy into it with the imprinting of prior life representing the moon energies. So while the other fish parallels faces the parallel to the ecliptic path, like it's this doorway it's going to come into, and also where the sun travels through the constellation touching the ecliptic. So in looking at the Pisces tarot card being the moon, and we have both sun and moon, and with the dog and the wolf here also representing the animal natures that come out of the deep waters and onto land. And then there's this crab here as well with the Cancer archetype. This is showing the Cancerian energies involved within Pisces itself. So Pisces has a very deep connection to Cancerian energy and also the imprinting that occurs during pregnancy, while the actual birthing process goes from Pisces, coming out of the womb or out of the cosmic womb into Aries or life itself, which also represents the AC. So this is the um, egoic, ego conscious identity through the moon. Moon being the ruler of Cancer, which you can see in the card as well. And where was I? Yeah, and then with the Pisces or Aries archetype playing out the ascendant or first house in a chart. And Sun is also exalted in Aries. And then I found this fish. It's they call it like a leaf fish. Whoops, this leaf fish here. I'm not going to pronounce it, or well, if I try Monocercis or Cerhus, Monocercis, uh, poly Polyacanthus. Anyway, these are apple leaves here, and they kind of look like this fish. They've got like these ridges going on, and apple leaves have a bit of a ridge or these little sharp points on their edges. And also with the fish, like the bone, I mean, you can see the bone structure here in the leaves as well, which I found interesting in all leaves. And then here we've got the cytoplasm going on and the dissolution, the completion that occurs during this phase, and that's actually happening in nature itself too. Um, so, so then finally with the star, um, we've got that Star of Bethlehem, which we're all familiar with that story of Jesus's birth, but it's also possibly representing the Alrisha star in Pisces, which, when joined, I think at the time Jesus was born, it was joined up with a Saturn Jupiter conjunction. And so it represented that bright shining star in the sky, or that there was this demigod or someone highly evolved who's attained radiant energy and identity and achieved creative power and unconditional love without any trace of condemnation. So it's yeah, that pretty much concludes, I think yeah, that pretty much concludes my plant section of this presentation. So going into the aspects as well and the phases, we've got the last quarter phase, which involves the square, quintile, sextile. And then the balsamic phase, which is the square, sextile, or semi-square, semi-sextile, and conjunction. So I'm just going to look at my notes again here. So this is about my discussion of Venus and Pluto in relationships, the last quarter phase in relationships. This is quite a difficult phase, bringing that crisis in consciousness that I just mentioned in Capricorn. It's about the completion of two people's highest potential achieved, but now there's this need to begin stepping down a mountain. And this is the shedding or deconditioning from past belief systems, philosophies, structures built into the relationship. It's higher meaning to the parties and the truths of the relationship to each other. And there's a need for change or to even rebel against these prior structures in order for the relationship to grow. And as they say, all good things come to an end, or things are always changing. And this is basically to help the people, the couple or two people embrace more universal truths about themselves and their relationship, and to offer something outside of themselves while they're even still in the relationship if they can survive this crisis. And this can produce all that Plutonian Scorpio energy where you've got the power struggles, confrontations, ultimatums, limitations, love-hate dynamics, do or die drama, and the sabotaging of one another, etc., and a lot of instability and challenges. And but it also brings new levels within the relationship of evolution as well, and also evolution within one another. So the last quarter square aspect, this is basically the relationships, again, prior belief structures, values, and worth and meaning, that now are holding onto big incompatibilities. So the couple may need to face new challenges to remain together or to ultimately separate. Some of these new challenges may include changes in each other's authorities, new responsibilities, or they've got these control issues coming out. Perhaps the relationship has become toxic. Stagnation has set in. One of them's hardly ever home. There could be domination, manipulation tactics playing out, or jealousies, betrayals, basically the works that have tainted it, guilt trips, and just an overall feeling of being overwhelmed, not wanting to be with one another anymore. And there's this tiredness to putting up with one another's habits as well, and feeling like a burden. And so there's this dissatisfaction in the relationship, and it feels limited and restricted. And this could be repression or oppression, or suppression, depression, and basically the couple desires different things now, and compromise has become a heavy burden as well. So an example could be having achieved that big house, you've got the financial stability, you've attained some kind of career status or professional success in society, or the kids have gone, they've grown up, moved away, and there's this now what moment, or is this it? This fear sets in, who the identity of the relationship as well, it sets in. And what's happened here is, and the couple looks at each other and they're like, I don't know you anymore. And so basically the couple's outgrown one another, and um, the things that they used to do together or found value in, and worth in, are no longer holding the same meaning and structure they once did. Um, so there's something that needs to be done here. There's a re-examination that needs to occur, which is actually in process together already, with the deconditioning and the shedding. They're already apparent in just these feelings, emotions alone. And this is going on so that the couple can let new perspectives come in. They're being pushed forward in a place of stagnation to try to let go of those older securities that they were hanging on to, and to find new ways of relating to one another, some kind of new meaning to each other. And so here is where the compromising, which has become a burden, gives the opportunity for collaboration, which helps begin a new direction forward to give new perspectives. And or ultimately, the couple comes to the conclusion that they need to separate. This is it. Like, we're done. We're finished here. So, and Capricorn too, it does have the death archetype qualities in it as well. So that brings me now to talking about the quintile. And the quintile helps create potential for change. It helps to harmonize and unionize the two people with some kind of new inspiration. It's very creative energy. If the relationship is strong enough to overcome that last quarter square crisis, it gives the relationship a new order, a new substance to it or to one another. Some new dynamic reorients the couple into a new direction, and that something they feel something more awaits them. There's something better. There's got to be something better. So, an example could be the boredom has hit rock bottom and both do very little together. They don't even communicate. They're not attracted to each other. And say they're not feeling attracted, and there's maybe they're overweight or they just don't look the same that they did when they first got together. And so one says, hey, let's try a weight loss program together. And through it, they can begin to motivate each other along. They choose better food, so they go grocery shopping, they cook different meals together, they get healthy again. So all of this creativity starts to become nurtured, and it begins to emerge into a new direction that breaks up all the dullness of the relationship. But also with this aspect, it's not it's a turning point, but it's not that powerful. So the results won't likely come right away. It's only the initial action that's taken, and that over time it can begin to manifest. And again, this can backfire to where the couple instead has this exaggerated impression of one another. Um, like say one's got a health condition and is not able to lose the weight, it needs the weight to live, like to survive. And so it nevertheless it basically creates something new within the relationship to move forward. And then that comes brings me to the sextile. So this is this sextile, it's where am I? I'm still up here in this phase. This is the beginning of the Aquarius archetype here. So this is kind of like the Uranian, it has a Uranian quality to it. It gives ease to the relationship. It's got a spark. And here there's opportunities for new insights and new breakthroughs to occur, to offer a higher purpose, to make the relationship better in giving each other more individuality, more freedom, and more insight to one another. There's likely some desire to start rebelling against what the relationship was, its past structures. And so the couple may bring or have a desire to bring something new, bring the relationship to a higher platform consisting of more involvement in community or group setting rather than just between themselves. So this could be the couple where they go one goes rock climbing or hiking, and the other one decides to go sailing. Used to sail when they were younger, wants to go back to it. And so they have different experiences. They discover new aspects about themselves to integrate into the relationship. And these can be things they weren't aware of before because they were too immersed in these old past patterns and structures. And so there's this understanding and respect for one another and one another's unique identity and their growing identity as well. That they get to share with each other, and instead of arguing about some party in the neighborhood that they went to last weekend, they went to together. Now they've gone out and had separate experiences, and they can kind of join together and create new sparks within their relationship again. So that's the sextile. Now I'm coming into the balsamic phase, which is um, basically closing off. Oh, sorry, it's here. Begins here in the middle of Aquarius. So it's like around 15 or 16 degrees Aquarius. And there's this evolutionary need to begin culminating these past energetic dynamics of the relationship and to conclude or complete unfinished business within it so that the seeding of a new cycle, a new reality can begin to develop. So there's a lot of internalization, intercontemplation going on. for this new inner reality to connect to universal truths, which can be reflected upon and reformed, just like that cytoplasm. So it's kind of like a defragmentation going on to reassemble something. And this is a very creative and visionary time, and how the two people want to see their relationship continue to unfold, as well as in each other to grow, and also within themselves personally. But still, again, like as with Plutonic energies, Venus and Pluto, it's a very intense time. So that brings me to the semi square. And this brings a lot of tension and unease. It's right, again, right in the middle of the Aquarian archetype. And so there's a lot of rebelling going on, either against each other or against the relationship. There's this broken up feeling in the relationship. It's fragmented, even though you're still together. And Aquarius also has Saturn as its ruling planet, one of its ruling planets. And that brings that void or dullness to it again. And there's this begging for something new to come in. It's that Uranus is knocking on Saturn's door like, hey, wake up. And so there's this tendency for the two people to withdraw from others or themselves, or each other. And this is so that they can internalize the things that are not working smoothly and are needing to be resolved. And this causes friction, that these two parties are forced to take some kind of action now. And there's this either letting go of one another or the relationship and moving on, or a surrendering to how things are actually becoming between them without losing sight of each other and the relationship. So an example could be the couple desires changes in their sexual orientation, which is very Venus Pluto, and they decide to do swinging with other couples, or to switch um, their orientation, to become, more attuned to what they feel within themselves, or to get out there and start exploring new things. So this creates new dynamics and experiences, but also obviously with the square here, it creates new insecurities emerging that can lead to shock and trauma, and all of that Plutonic stuff of the confrontations, jealousies, fears, power struggles, etc. And it's just that this stuff is tied to the past conditioned ways of the relationship or themselves, and for those who are not ready for such radical or eccentric changes, this is where the confrontations come in. There's confusion, lies, deception, jealousies, trickery, and basically their faith is challenged, faith of who they are. And there's this feeling of feeling lost and abandoned, and the crisis. This is crisis oriented. It's a square. Um, Semi-square. So these new experiences can cause the relationship to either break apart, um, or perhaps the couple is able to overcome and gain new insight about themselves individually and their relationship, and possibly resulting in that breaking free of those past conditioned sexual orientation of each other or the relationship. So now coming to the semi-sextile, this is a very visionary time. That's this one here. This is the beginning of Pisces, very visionary and creative. And this is that cytoplasm stage where the energies are restructuring now into a new form, and the couple's ultimate purpose and meaning to one another here begins to become apparent, as well as the unconditional love for one another and also oneself. The energies are more subtle in their influences. There's this letting go of or reflection of the past that is in a state of dissolution. Also, disassociation from each other, the relationship, or this dissatisfaction or void may come up as well, because It's still, um, I think it's still part of, well, anyway, I'll just move on. Where am I? I'm getting mixed up in my notes here. The void, yeah, it may feel present here, and with Pisces, the relationship may not feel as defined anymore. Um, so there's a little bit of fear here too, but basically just may not feel as defined as it was. So what's needed here is to let things process, focus on keeping the faith, trust that things will still progress positively, even if there's very little outward action occurring. And it's a time to let the creative impulses flow, um, let the relationship's new desires begin to reassemble and form, and to light the path forward of the new or of the relationship's future. An example could be the couple who've been together for decades and are still the best of friends. They're able to stand together on their own precipice, or the relationship precipice together, where they still feel valued and worthy to one another. And there's that unconditional love present, as well as forgiveness, compassion, and these elements help restructure the relationship and help it to move forward. So the conjunction is basically a completion of Venus and Pluto's entire evolutionary cycle together. Um, their seeds are already germinating and new relationship dynamics are about to begin. This couple will not likely go through the same, they won't need to go through the same past experiences together again. Instead, the new adventures await them. But again, this aspects can still bring the confusion and feelings of being lost within the relationship. It won't have a clear direction forward, and it's basically a time of quiet contemplation inside that darkness, passing away of the past. And it's basically the death of a birthing relationship that's occurring. So here in the darkness, there are likely, again, the feelings of confusion. There's a need to surrender and let go of the past, let it all dissolve. And so this aspect can also bring endings to a relationship. And of course, it's always best not to begin a new relationship with this aspect, and to instead wait a few days longer. Because I think once Venus passes Pluto, that's probably the beginning where it would be good to start a new relationship. It's the beginning of a new evolutionary cycle. So that brings me to the end. I just want to take some time here to say thank you. Divine blessings to you all. Thank you for being here. Thank you to Sue and Robin and the EA Zoom meeting room. Um, Also, thank you to my magnificent teachers as well, um, at Solway School of Evolutionary Astrology, also, the Jeffrey Wolf Green Association of Evolutionary Astrologers, and other astrologers and evolutionary astrologers abroad, and also Michael Zezas, always for his continued wisdom, guidance, support, and friendship. And special thanks to Darren Turpin again. He's a gardener in the UK, and he was very kind to answer all my questions, and he let me use a lot of the apple tree pictures in my presentation. So thank you so much. So if you're looking for schools, books, and resources, here's a list. And I meant to add one more to them. I forgot to mention as well, but there's this book called The Evolutionary um, Oh God, I can't remember now. I will post it. I can't believe I forgot it. Um, anyway, The Journey of a Yogi, I think it's called it. Yogananda wrote it, and I read it, and it's probably one of the most brilliant books that you could ever read. It's got everything in it. about life, why we're here, answers many questions. And I believe Steve Jobs, um, at his funeral, in his will, he wanted everybody to have a copy of this book at the table um, during his funeral to read that book. He read it, and I think he was a disciple of Yogananda as well. So I just wanted to mention all of that. And yeah, so thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you,
Blessings.
Thank you, Joanne, so much. Were you talking about autobiography of a yogi? Okay.
Thank you. I think I just have information overload going
Overload,
on
yeah,
right now.
that's
Um,
okay. We'll put it in the notes of the video. And thank you so much for doing this series.
Yeah, thank you. The whole series was exceptionally well done. I love the way
Thank you.
you tied in such detail between the relationships between nature and the planetary cycles.
I
Thanks
have
so
to say
much.
the same. I feel the same way. This was amazing. Thank you,
Thanks,
Joanne.
Jordan.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
so much.